Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited about this episode because this is with Angie Lane, who is the Chief Development Officer for the Houston Ballet, and Susan Binney, who is the Market Co-Chair for Houston Ballet's Nutcracker Market. And for anyone not familiar with it, it truly is one of the most fun multi-day events in Texas, or really anywhere, quite frankly, because they've really got everything under the sun. There is commerce, there is a gala, there are fashion shows, and they do it in a series of days in a sequence. And the best part is it's before the holidays, so people get a kickoff of all their holiday regalia and fun. So, and no one really does this better on a large scale than the Houston Ballet. So we're really fortunate to have these two wonderful people as guests today. So with that, Angie, Susan, welcome. I'm so thrilled you're here to join us today.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Oh, absolutely. So, Angie, share with us what the mission of the Houston Ballet is.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Well, the Houston Ballet's mission is to inspire a lifelong love of dance in our community. And the Nutcracker Market is really essential to that because as our largest fundraiser, it really makes possible a lot of the extensive arts education programs that we do, as well as provide scholarships for aspiring dancers to participate in our academy.
That's fantastic. And that's what I love about a lot of arts programs, especially ones like yours, is that there's stuff devoted to children who want to pursue careers in the arts. And I think that showcases that well. And I've been to several Houston Ballet events. You all always do a really good job of highlighting and incorporating that. And I think that's fantastic. And I want, I always like asking this question at the beginning of a segment because I've always found that people get involved with organizations in different ways. And Susan, I'd love to hear how you initially got involved with the Houston Ballet / Nutcracker Market. And then after Susan responds, Angie, I'd love to hear your path to this organization as well. So Susan, feel free to take it away.
Okay. I actually came indirectly to Houston. I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I would be invited by customers to come every year to the Nutcracker Market. So I traveled here to visit it. And so when I finally moved here in 2004, I basically brought clients to the market and then got involved with the guild. And when I retired, then I became very involved in the market.
That's really interesting. So you found out and knew about this, and I think that just goes to show the power of the Nutcracker Market. It's been going on for over 40 years, that you didn't even live here and you already knew about it. So for you, it was, coming new to a city. It sounds like the Houston Ballet was a great organization for you to get involved with because you resonated with it in some way already, even though hadn't, you had just moved into town.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Angie, I'd love for you to share, how you initially got involved with the Houston Ballet.
Yeah, well, arts have been important to me since a young child. I was very lucky that my grandparents took me regularly to see performances and to really expose me to art. And that stuck with me for many years. It's been a support community and inspiration throughout really touch points in my life. And so Houston is known for its very strong, vibrant arts community. And I feel very privileged to have this role to be able to support the arts and again, be able to be part of a small part of this huge Nutcracker market that such a big fundraiser for our community, but also brings our community together and supports all of the great arts that we do at Houston Ballet.
They really do, and Houston really does have a world-class art scene that's really second to none with every genre. I mean, the world is your oyster in Houston where that's concerned, and it really is. It's amazing. And, I want to dive into Nutcracker Market because there are so many fun, wonderful, fascinating, cool elements to it. Susan, share with us the concept, just for listeners and people who may not be familiar with it, the concept of what the Houston Ballet Nutcracker Market is.
Actually, Angie could probably answer this a little bit better, but the market began as a church bazaar for over 40 years ago, and it's grown to this huge holiday market. And so it's been 275 pop-up shops. We call them merchants, predominantly small businesses and mainly women owned. But it started back then, and if I'm not wrong, I believe the guild was a big part of that in the beginning. So we pretty much were the volunteers, and it's continued that way. And now we require everyone that actually is a committee chair to become a guild member.
That's fantastic and a great way to get involved. And Angie, I'd love for you to elaborate and expand, on the concept of Nutcracker Market, especially from the perspective of the organization in Houston Ballet.
Yeah. Well, as Susan said, and she is a former guild president, the Houston Ballet Guild has been an important driver of the success of the market. It started out as a small bazaar with volunteers bringing things to sell, and 40 years ago, and has grown tremendously into just a shopping frenzy with everything that you can imagine, from clothes for the whole family, fun giftables, bath items, things to make your home festive, Christmas clothes, gourmet food, jewelry, all kinds of stuff. And we have about 100,000 shoppers that come out every year across the 4.5 days for us. Collectively, last year, they spent $23 million. So together, they have a massive economic impact, not just on those merchants. Like pop-up shops, that we call them merchants. A lot of the small businesses wait all year for market to be able to have exposure to such a large shop, people ready to spend. But then also Houston Ballet makes a commission on every, as a fundraiser, Houston Ballet makes a commission off every product sold. We are also very fortunate to earn money off the admissions and then the special events that we'll talk about, little side events that like luncheons and a preview party, and that help add on to the experience, bring people out, but also allow us to engage in different ways.
$23 million and 100,000 people who attend over. I mean, that is remarkable. And I'm sure for something that started as a church bazaar, I'm sure if you had told somebody in the 80s that's what it would become, they probably would have given you a side eye and been like, what are you talking about? What do you think, and I'd love for either of you to chime in. And Susan, I know you've been involved in one way or another or attended over the last 20 years. How has the market evolved and how does it keep just continuing to grow and continuing to be so beloved by residents in Houston? Because to get 100,000 people to do anything over 4 days, I mean, that's just, it's a feat that very few organizations can do.
Well, it's
I
just,
I feel like, go ahead.
no, please, Susan, go.
Okay, I feel like that every year people love it, and it's just the most exciting thing in November. And they're like, for me as a volunteer, I set aside everything that week just to work it. And I know it's going to be a long week, but I love it, and everyone does it. People that come to it, they talk to me all the time. It's still evolving. They're like, I didn't know about the preview party. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about that. So every year, it's just word of mouth type stuff. And we make it exciting because we get new merchants every year. We basically kind of look at them and say, okay, do we have too many of the jewelry, too many of the clothes? So we try to mix it up and make it exciting and changed up every year.
That's fantastic. And Angie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to piggyback on what Susan said. And our shoppers are so supportive of the market, and they really bring the fun. They come out ready to shop, ready to have a good time. They're decked in their holiday finest, very festive, and really their support has been a big factor about making this such a success for so long.
Well, and just it sounds fun, kind of the way Susan described it from start to finish. And as market chair, Susan, I know that you probably have a hand in. You were talking about the vendor selection. I'd like to dive into that just a little bit more. What do you all look for in addition to, I want X number of maybe jewelry and X number of clothes? What types of vendors are the ideal vendors that you look for in terms of having a partnership? With a certain retailer, from a commerce perspective.
I would actually say, like this year, we looked at a lot of times we don't have a lot for men. So we try to look at, oh, they're offering men items and stuff like that. So, but we do steer away from too much jewelry or too many clothes. So if it's home goods, we'll look at that. If it's Christmas, we want to make sure we're not, too many Christmas shops and all that. So we try to make a variety of stuff. I hope I'm answering your question
Yeah,
correctly.
you absolutely are. And just, and I'm glad you mentioned that there's other things and not to have too much of something because you want to, if 100,000 people are coming, people are going to have lots of different things that they're going to want to have. And that's, and the fact that you got over 300, 300 vendors in there is really, it's really just, it's beyond cool. And I'd love to ask the next question, and I'd like each of you to answer, and Angie, will start with you, and then Susan, I'd love for you to chime in. But, given that this is the organization's largest fundraiser every single year, what are the secrets to having a successful relationship between the nonprofit, which is Houston Ballet, and the event chair, especially because, a guild is it's kind of an adjacent organization per se. It's a part of the family, but it's not in the core. So I'd love to understand, from your perspective, what is the key to that successful relationship between the chair and the nonprofit?
Well, we mentioned the Guild before, and it's a support organization that's tied to Houston Ballet. And that really is our core of dedicated volunteers that are essential to the market success. From the Guild, ongoing volunteers that participate in the market and throughout the organization throughout the year. Each year, a committee that involves Guild past chairs and on the what we call the foundation side at Houston Ballet select the next incoming chairs in succession. And so it really is a group process in that way. And the sort of the staff chair partnership sort of becomes the nucleus of to drive forward the event. And so on a staff side, of course, we're responsible for the operations. Me personally, I have a really keen eye on our revenue targets and just making sure that we are really thoughtful about how we are pushing our revenue goals, our revenue drivers forward and what strategies were in place. Our volunteers and our chair provide great oversight. They ensure that we're transparent and we're sharing information. They provide a great feedback loop with our volunteers and our community to make sure that, I can have a tendency to be just focused on the operations or just focused on the revenue. And so they're great to help us to lift our vision and make sure that we're looking forward and at the big picture, and just really keeping us on track, and also making sure that we're really taking care of those volunteers, our guild members that are instrumental to the success of the market. All of that sort of comes together in a really nice partnership. Thanks to Susan, Binney, our co-chair.
Absolutely. And Susan,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts and your take on that, from a chair perspective.
Okay, from a chair perspective, we are kind of like the liaisons between the merchants and development. And we basically are kind of like the common ground where they'll come to us. Maybe we won't bother them. So if we can answer a question for them, we're happy to do it without bothering the staff so that they don't get focused on something that they shouldn't be. But anyway, it's really bottom line is we're all together for the same common goal, and that's what's very important to make it successful.
Absolutely. The cause first. And, when everyone realizes that and everyone realizes they're on the same team is really when things can gel. And I got a follow-up question for each of you, and we'll start with Angie on that. And Angie, and I'm saying this because you're a COO, and I think you're the first COO we've ever had as a guest. So, this is the perfect type of event to ask this for. Talk about how, and Susan may have something to chime in on this as well, but how you successfully manage and load in 300 plus different vendors for this market, and how you spatially do that out so that people can have a really good immersive experience. And I love for you to talk about that from an operational perspective, because that really is an operational feat to do.
It is an incredible operational feat, and we have some of the best trained staff in the world to be able to manage the logistics of a load-in process that takes several days, not just on the staff side, but also on the volunteer side. Volunteers like Susan and some of our others, they've been volunteering out at the market often for years and know this process and know, as Susan was saying, how to talk with merchants, how to settle their fears, how to answer their questions, how to make the process easy for them. Load-in starts, sometimes up to a week, at least certainly 5 days before, depending on other things that are going on. We are very lucky to house the market in NRG Park, which is a huge convention center, has state-of-the-art facilities, has a huge loading dock, has really thought through. They have trade shows, they have the rodeo goes on there, many other events go on in that space, and so they are also very well trained. And the logistics of organizing all of the cars that have to come through, all of the people that have to come through, being able to lay out of course, we have staff year round that work on all the ins and outs of what it takes to put a floor plan together, working with the fire marshal to make sure that the space is just right, making sure that we have place for the bars and the food. Like all of these things come together in a way that is really magic. And I would say, really the secret to it is learning over the years and having a really great, I mentioned before, sort of feedback loop. And so that we're getting feedback every year to continue to improve our systems and processes to make sure that we have as smooth process as possible.
That's so well said, and I'm so glad that you brought the secret just being having the information and taking in the feedback from customers, from committees, from vendors, and all that to really streamline things because that is, like you said, it can take up to a week, and there's lots of that's a big engine with lots of interconnecting parts all doing that. So thank you for sharing that. And then Susan, I'd love for you to talk about this because you had mentioned earlier, you initially, you had gone to the event before you moved and then you got involved as a volunteer. So talk about, from a chair's perspective, what makes for a great volunteer?
Let me think. A great volunteer is someone that's enthusiastic, wants to do the right thing. Like I said, doing the common goal is to be successful and honor what the ballet wants. But as a merchant chairman, I'm normally a merchant chairman, so we come in and again we pretty much just smooth things over, help out where we're needed. If they need us to be pulled off to do something else, we will. If we need to go measure the booths, we will. We're just there for anything and everything that the merchants have to make it successful for them. And so they know that and they come to us and ask us for help. So like I said, we're just an all in one shop.
That's a way to do that. And just, the enthusiasm is really important, especially, your perspective of having started as a volunteer yourself. So I really appreciate those insights. And, I want to talk about because this has been going on for 40 years. It's Angie, I'd love for you, from your perspective, because you kind of get to see the things behind the scenes, so you probably have an interesting take on this question. But what can an organization do to create that devoted following for its annual signature fundraising event so they keep coming back year after year, bringing their friends and all that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then Susan, after Angie's finished, I'd love to hear yours as well, just in terms of how you've brought other people into the event.
Think having a fun event and having something that really focused on the experience of both our merchants and our shoppers. And so Susan just mentioned briefly about sort of our volunteers, but also we really have an eye towards making sure our pop-up shops, what we call our merchants, have a really good experience. One of the things that's a little unique about Nutcracker Market, as opposed to maybe like Junior League bazaars or some of the other things that you might see, is that Houston Ballet makes a commission off every sale. And so we're really motivated to get shoppers in to make sure that our merchants have a good experience and that they're able to sell because our success is tied to their success. And I think that when you compare Nutcracker Market to some other things that go on in our community, that's one of the things that makes us really unique and really puts our motivation back into the whole experience, bringing our shoppers in and making sure our merchants are successful. Think, like I said before, having it fun, our shoppers come in festive attire, that's a big part. People really enjoy the community aspect of it. And then, sharing the impact that all of these people coming together for this holiday, sharing that impact that we're able to provide scholarships, that the arts education that we provide in the community is often provided free of charge, thanks to the good work that goes on over these 4 days.
That's amazing. And Susan, I'd love for you to chime in on anything additional, from your perspective in creating a devoted following and, getting your friends to also come and come back as well.
Okay. I do know for sure some of the merchants only come to this market. This is their main source of income. So they basically come once a year and we encourage them to decorate and to make it exciting for the like Angie said, they all dress up. So some of the merchants will dress up as well. And it's just a fun atmosphere to be around. And we're totally immersed in Christmas or whatever. I mean, it's a very good time, but it's so much fun. And unless people have been out there to see it, it's hard to even explain because it all comes together in that 1 week, and it's surprising to be there in the very beginning and to see it at the very end when it's being broken down. It's almost sad when it's going away.
I I hear that. There is an undercurrent though to, basically, what you're both saying, and that is that everyone wants to be there. And I think that that energy is contagious when the vendors are really going all out and they're dressing in, we'll call it in character for whatever it is that their booth or their theme is going to be or their pop-up's going to be. Shoppers notice that. And when merchants want to be there and they're happy, the consumers are also happy because they feel like they're going to get a good experience too. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And that was really kind of the undercurrent of what I heard from each of you. And, Susan, I want to direct this next question to you because I know that, you oversee the whole market, but I also know that there are committee chairs for the multiple events that kind of go on underneath it during market. So talk about how you all go about selecting committee chairs for the multiple events that are happening during, the signature events that are happening during Nutcracker Market.
Okay, like the special events, preview
Yeah,
party, snow
absolutely.
queen. Okay.
Yes.
We actually look at that. It's normally people that are committed to the market and they're basically out there. They have connections to other committees and things like that, so they could bring in their friends and all that. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Someone that would be the face of the market. So, like for the preview party, Angie made a comment that we're honoring the Academy this year, which is near and dear to my heart because as the guild president and then committee chair, I basically honor them with summer intensive and stuff like that every year. So we're glad to have them and to be able to honor them because it's like I said, it's a wonderful thing for the ballet. But again, back on trying to select people, the Snow Queen and the Sugar Plum, this year we have Board of Trustees members that are going to be heading it up. And so that's good because it puts another face to it. It's more involved with the ballet, I would say.
That's fantastic. And Angie, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to piggyback on what Susan said. One of the things that we do as well is survey our people that have participated in the past and ask their interest. And so that gives Susan, and we have a great co-chair, her name is Jen, Susan and Jen, the opportunity to look at those who might raise their hand and express some interest, and then look at the factors that Susan mentioned, their experience with the market. Can they bring in new people? Have they expressed an interest? And in recent years, we've been looking across the organization as well, not maybe just people been in with the committee, but there are people on the foundation side board, on the Houston LA board, that would be really sort of strategic for us to bring them along and get them more familiar with the market because of the networks they can bring in, or for a number of factors that might make that strategic for us as an organization.
All really, really good advice. And I'd love for you all to each share some, because I consider there's three VIP events on top of the market itself. So it's the preview party gala, the Snow Queen fashion show, and the Sugar Plum fashion show. And I'd love for each of you to share, and we can start with Angie on this one, then Susan can chime in. Share with us some details about each of those events and kind of what the purpose of those is, because three signature events in 5 days that's a lot. So understanding kind of, how they're different and the audiences they might attract, I think would be really valuable for our listeners to understand.
Well, the market technically is open to the public from Thursday to Sunday. Wednesday night before the grand opening, we have a preview party that targets about 5,000 people. It's a higher value ticket that can be purchased, and it's known as really the best holiday party of the year. It has live music, we have food out. You can see the market. You can be first to see all the new merchandise because, as Susan says, the merchandise can change every year. We certainly have long time merchants, but also fresh new ones that are added each year. And it's a great way to sort of be seen among because it's also not as crowded, and so that is a wonderful night for us. We'll sell probably about $1.2 million in tickets to that evening, which isn't far off from our annual gala, our ballet ball that we do, and so it is a major undertaking right on the cusp of this big week that will follow. We have two luncheons on Thursday and Friday that attract about 1,500 people at each luncheon. The one is focused currently with fashions from Saks. The second one is fashions from Macy's. And so it spotlights evening wear or more festive uh, day wear, depending on the luncheon. And it's just a fun opportunity. A lot of corporations buy tables. They bring their employees, or, colleagues will come out together, friends will come out together. They'll raise a glass, they'll see some great attire, and then they'll go shopping and just make a really great day of it. And so together, those special events have really been a strategic way that over time that have been grown to really enhance our acts in the way that we're able to interact with so many shoppers. I mentioned 100,000, but then also a great way for us to continue to bring in new people with our chairs, with table buyers that come back and bring in new people. It's been really instrumental to being able to grow the market over time.
Oh, that's fantastic. And that just, gosh, two fashion shows with 1,500 people each. I mean, that's pretty epic. And Susan, I'd love for you to share, your thoughts and kind of, what you all look forward to from a guild perspective about these three events in particular.
Well, I actually led the preview party, and that's when I traveled here. That's what I would come to. And then when I would take clients, that's what I would bring them to. And so they got introduced to it that way. To me, that is one of the best parties all around for the whole year. And there again, you can get dressed up, and it's almost like you said, a gala. And it's just so much fun. And the fashion shows, I have friends that's all they do. They come for that day. They start early. They come in and get, I guess, an early bird type ticket to come in, and they shop around, and then they go up and either change or they come dressed up to go to the fashion shows, and it's a wonderful experience.
That's just amazing. And what I'd love to ask each of you, and Angie, we can start with you on this one, is with all those different events going on, how do you all go about, and what advice would you give to somebody to really kind of you're creating unique experiences, but yet you kind of have to have a through line and a consistency. What advice would you give to somebody to kind of create a through line through, unique, very unique and diverse experiences?
Absolutely. Well, and I'll let Susan talk about the theme that they have chosen, or like the colors that they've chosen for this year that gives us a look and feel that can be carried on as a through line. It helps us tremendously that it's a holiday theme and that the Nutcracker is sort of a unifying principle to be able to come back to that even in new ways each year. The Nutcracker is Houston Ballet's largest run of performances that we have every year and has a deep and rich tradition that we can draw from different aspects of Nutcracker, the performance, to really highlight into Nutcracker Market. So that's really fun. And each year, our chairs really advise and help bring some through lines for us by selecting colors or different elements to really focus on that help put some through lines through the special events and at the market proper.
Awesome. And Susan, I'm dying to know what the theme is for this year and how you help create that through line. So please do share with us a little bit about this year's theme.
Okay. Really, it's just black and white colors with a pop of red, but it has some gold on it. And it's more sort of looks like Mackenzie Childs, the look. So I think it's going to be a great theme. We've got a bunch of different things that have it on it. So I think it will be carried throughout the market very well.
And we can carry that through on our printed materials, like our program and the invitation. There's an invitation that goes out, particularly to past buyers of special events, that gives you the information. And Susan and our chairs really set the colors and the tone for that. And people look forward every year to see what's it going to look like this year. What's going to, it brings a sense of excitement every year that we're able to mix it up in that way. And I'm really grateful to our chairs for that creativity and being able to have fresh ideas every year. It's really important.
Absolutely. And, I'm sure for things like the preview party, I'm sure people will dress in the thematics of the colors and they'll do nods to it, or they'll go all bold with a specific color if it's their favorite color. And that's kind of the fun thing about things like, preview events and things like that. It really allows people to really feel like they're making a night of it. And what's really unique is they're getting to make a night of it while shopping, which is, I mean, that's kind of a unique, almost kind of transcendent thing that people that a lot of people really don't necessarily do. And I'd love to ask this question as well. And we're coming up on time. I got a couple more questions, but this one in particular is, what advice would you give to an organization looking to host a multi-day event? And Angie, I'd love for you to talk about that from an operations perspective in particular of, what advice you would give to somebody, in terms of doing something that lasts 4 or 5 days.
Well, people come out and look at market from all over the country, and it is so well run, and predates. It's been going on for 40 years. It's had great leaders during this whole tenure of time, certainly predating my own participation. And people come out and they take a look and they want to replicate our success. And one of the things that we always say is that remember that we started 40 years ago in a church bazaar. That this is something that takes time to grow and develop, and that and to really nurture and care and to build that community. And that didn't happen in 2 or 3 years. And so thinking about a deeper investment in a really great structure. And then, from my perspective, every year looking at how can we add on in 1 or 2 ways. So not starting out with, a 4.5 day with 3 special events and 100,000 people. That would be a lot to take on. But, every year, having that base grown out for so long, for so many years, they didn't all add the first year. Maybe we added the preview party, then we added a luncheon, and that works. So we added the other luncheon, and then what other activities can we add? And that's really how we manage the market now. What 1 or 2 things can we do each year to try and experiment, or sort of to tinker or grow, so that we can continue to have a really strong experience, and also stay current because things change over time. Once market was almost completely cash. Who carries cash anymore? And so adapting with the times has been really important too.
It's such smart advice, and I even think about that part. But what I loved about it was almost like you were taking one step at a time up the staircase, as opposed to standing at the bottom and trying to jump on all 12, which I'm sure everyone did here when they were 5 and tried to do that and realized that probably wasn't the best idea. So that was really, really sound and good advice. And Susan, from an organization, running an event perspective, I'd love for you to share kind of your thoughts and advice on what advice you would give to somebody who's looking to head a multi-day event.
I think first it starts with good volunteers. You really need good volunteers to step in, be committed, and enthusiastic, like I said before. And then the staff makes it so easy for us. It's very nice. I don't think they had that in the very beginning. They had a small staff doing it. So look how it's grown. But it takes years to grow it to where it is. And I believe the staff has helped do that for sure.
I
And
love
I
that. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. I wanted to add on, and I think people may not look at I mean, you've mentioned it, Rob, but the operations that go behind it. We have 5 full-time people that work year round to make sure that this process goes. And so investing that resource is really important to being able to grow and develop something that has a strong foundation.
Absolutely. But all those pieces they were both really good sage advice. And I know we're coming up on time here, so I'd like to end with this question with most of the segments we do. So Angie, I'd love for you to go first, and then Susan, you can have the last word. And that is, what do all great signature fundraising events have in common?
I mean, I think it all goes back to impact, right? Having an impact on your community, both in the way we've just talked about with our shoppers, with our merchants, with the good that it comes together. All of that is what drives participation and what people really want to be involved.
Fantastic. And Susan, you would get the last word.
I think it's just the shoppers have a great time. They love it. They come all dressed up in different gears like we talked about before, and it just makes it exciting. I mean, we'll even stop and take pictures with them. It's just a fun experience.
And people want to be there, and that's why you draw 100,000 people over 4.5 days. And I don't know of any nonprofit other than you all who is able to do that. And this has just been the most wonderful conversation. So Angie, Susan, thank you both so much. I really had a blast chatting with you both today.
Thank you,
Thank
Rob. It's been
you.
a pleasure.
Absolutely. And Nutcracker Market, benefiting the Houston Ballet, will be held from November 12th to November 16th, 2025 at NRG Center in Houston, Texas. For more information, please visit houstonballet.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.